Every retail worker knows the feeling, that creeping sensation when you're alone in the store after hours. When the fluorescent lights hum their electric lullaby, and the shadows between the shelves seem just a little too deep. But for Maya Rodriguez, working the night shift at Thornwood General Store wasn't just unsettling, it was personal. 7 years ago, her best friend vanished from this very building during inventory night. The case went cold, despite Maya's desperate pleas for a real investigation. Now, armed with hidden cameras and a heart full of rage, Maya has returned to uncover the truth. What she doesn't know is that some truths have teeth, and the thing that took her friend has been waiting patiently behind the shelves. Hungry for another chance to feed, the help wanted sign in Thornwood General Store's window was faded and curled at the edges, like it had been waiting there specifically for Maya Rodriguez to find it. She stood on the cracked sidewalk of the dying strip mall, her reflection ghostly in the dusty glass, and felt her pulse quicken with equal parts dread and determination. 7 years. 7 years since Cassandra Liu had clocked in for a closing shift and never clocked out. 7 years since Maya had received that final text. Something's weird here. Shelves keep moving. Call you after inventory? 7 years of unanswered questions, dismissive police reports, and a grief so heavy it had transformed into something harder. Sharper revenge. Maya was 28 now, but she felt ancient. While her college friends had built careers and started families, she'd built an obsession. Private investigators who'd taken her money and delivered nothing. Freedom of information requests that revealed the police had barely investigated. And finally, after years of dead ends, a breakthrough. An internet forum where former Thornwood employees whispered about the thing in the back. About shelves that moved on their own. About the night shift workers who'd quit without explanation. The current manager, Gary Pitts, was a heavy-set man in his 50s with sweat stains under his arms and eyes that never quite met hers during the interview. Night shift, minimum wage, inventory, and stocking. You sure you want it? Most people don't last a week, I'm sure, Maya said, her voice steady despite the hammer of her heart. Had a girl go missing from here, years back. Police said she probably just ran off, but it spooked folks. You might have heard about it. Maya forced her face into neutral curiosity. I think I remember something. They never found her? Nope. Terrible thing. Gary's eyes flickered to the back of the store, then away. Anyway, you'll be working alone most nights. Stock comes in at 11 p.m., you process it, and get it on the shelves by 6 a.m. Easy enough. It's easy, right? Maya started that very night. At 10:45 p.m., Thornwood General Store transformed. The last customer, tired mother buying diapers, pushed through the doors, and Gary locked them behind her with an echoing click that sounded far too final. The overhead lights seemed to dim, though Maya knew that was impossible. The music that played during business hours cut off, leaving only the hum of refrigeration units and the occasional tick of the ancient heating system. Delivery should be here in 15, Gary said. Handing her a scanner and inventory sheet. Stock it all. Face the shelves. Sweep the floors. Keep your phone charged in case you need to call me. But don't call me unless it's an emergency. What counts as an emergency? Gary's expression did something strange, a flicker of fear quickly masked. You'll know. Probably won't happen, though. Just stay in the main aisles. Don't go wandering into the storage area unless you have to. Before Maya could ask why, he was gone. The back door slamming behind him with a sound like a coffin closing, Maya stood alone in the empty store, felt the weight of 7 years pressing down on her. She'd prepared for this. Hidden in her backpack were 3 small wireless cameras, each no bigger than a button, with battery life that could last for days. Over the next few hours, she'd place them strategically throughout the store, especially in the areas where Cassandra had last been seen. The delivery truck arrived right on schedule. A bored driver dumping pallets of merchandise in the receiving area without a word. Maya signed for it and watched him drive away, his taillights disappearing into the November darkness. Then she was truly alone. She started with the cameras, moving quickly and efficiently. One behind a display of motor oil where it could capture the main aisle. One tucked into a high shelf near the back, overlooking the storage room entrance. The third she saved wanting to scout the layout first. The store was larger than it appeared from outside. 12 aisles of general merchandise, food, hardware, cleaning supplies, cheap clothes. The kind of place that served the forgotten neighborhoods, where people came because they had no other choice. The shelves were old industrial metal, the kind that could be adjusted by unhooking them from their supports and moving them up or down. Maya began stocking, letting her hands work on autopilot while her mind wandered through memories. Cassandra, laughing at their college apartment, flour in her hair from a failed baking experiment. Cassandra furious at the injustice in the world, planning protests and writing articles. Cassandra accepting this job because her student loans were crushing her, because she needed any income she could get. Even if it meant working nights in a creepy store. That's when Maya heard it, a sound like metal scraping against concrete. Coming from aisle 7, she froze, box of cereal in her hands, listening. The sound came again, deliberate, purposeful, like something heavy being dragged across the floor. But she could see down aisle 7 from where she stood. It was empty. Old building, Maya whispered to herself. Settling foundations, pipes, perfectly normal. She forced herself to keep working, but now she was acutely aware of every sound. The refrigerators cycled on and off with wheezing breaths. Something in the walls made skittering noises, probably mice. The heating system clanked and groaned. All explainable. All normal, except for the footsteps. They started around 1 a.m., soft and careful, coming from the direction of the storage room. Maya's rational mind supplied explanations. Stray cat, rats, the building settling. But her instincts, honed by 7 years of obsession, told her something different. She grabbed the scanner like a weapon and moved toward aisle 12. The furthest back, closest to the storage area, the aisle was shadowy despite the overhead lights, the shelves creating pockets of darkness. As she approached, she noticed something odd. The shelves weren't quite parallel to each other anymore. The left side seemed to have shifted inward, narrowing the aisle by at least a foot. Maya's mouth went dry. She pulled out her phone and checked the photos she'd taken at the start of her shift standard documentation. She'd told herself, but really insurance against exactly this kind of thing. In the photo, taken just 3 hours ago, the shelves were definitely parallel. They had moved. She approached slowly, her footsteps echoing in the empty store. The gap between the shelves was narrow now, maybe 3 feet across instead of 4. How was that possible? These shelves weighed hundreds of pounds when fully stocked. Maya reached out to touch the metal frame, and that's when she saw it. Behind the shelf, in the narrow space between the merchandise and the wall, something was pressed flat against the concrete. Something tall and impossibly thin, with too many joints in its limbs. Watching her through the gaps between boxes of detergent, she saw an eye large and reflective like an animal's, but positioned wrong, too high on what might have been a head. She saw fingers, if they could be called that, wrapped around the shelf's edge, each one at least a foot long and ending in something that wasn't quite a nail and wasn't quite a claw. Maya's scream caught in her throat, emerging as a strangled gasp. She stumbled backward, and in that instant of broken eye contact, the thing moved. The shelf swung outward with impossible speed, and the creature that had been hiding behind it flowed into the aisle like liquid shadow. It was tall, 7 feet at least, stand so thin it looked like it had been stretched on a rack. Its limbs bent in too many places, and when it moved, it made a sound like cracking ice. Maya ran. She didn't think, didn't plan, just bolted for the front of the store. Behind her, she heard the creature's pursuit, not footsteps, but a skittering, sliding sound like something that moved on more than 2 legs. Shelves crashed and products scattered as it came after her. She hit the front doors at full speed. Scrabbling at the lock, her hands shaking so badly she could barely grip the deadbolt. Through the glass, she could see the parking lot, streetlights, the normal world where monsters didn't exist. The lock wouldn't turn. Maya spun around, pressing her back against the door, and saw the creature at the end of the main aisle. It had stopped chasing her. Now it simply stood there, swaying slightly, its reflection appearing in a dozen different surfaces. The windows, the chrome fixtures, the polished floor. in the fluorescent light. She could see it more clearly, and the details made her stomach heave. Its skin was gray and seemed to shift like smoke, never quite solid. Its face was a nightmare of wrong proportions. Eyes too large, mouth too wide. Features that suggested something that had learned about human anatomy from descriptions. Alone and tried to approximate it. But it was the intelligence in those eyes that terrified her most. This wasn't a mindless beast. It was thinking, evaluating, deciding. Maya Rodriguez, it said, and its voice was a chorus of whispers, like multiple people speaking in imperfect synchronization. We've been waiting for you. The use of her name froze her blood. What are you? We are the collector. We have been here for so long. This place. It feeds us. The forgotten places, the ignored spaces, the gaps between where things should be. We live there. We thrive there. Cassandra, Maya gasped. Where is Cassandra Liu? The creature's head tilted, that terrible multi-voiced whisper taking on something that might have been curiosity. The other one? The one who saw us 7 years ago. She is part of us now. They all are. Everyone who has seen us, everyone who has discovered our space, they become additions. You killed her. The words came out flat, dead. No, killing is wasteful. We collected her. She exists between the shelves now, in the spaces that should be empty, but aren't. Would you like to join her? You came looking for her. We can arrange a reunion. The creature began to move forward, its joints bending in ways that made Maya's eyes water. She had nowhere to run. The door behind her was locked, and even if she could get it open, something told her the creature would never let her leave. It had been waiting for her, specifically for her. This was a trap she'd walked into willingly, but Maya hadn't spent 7 years preparing to die. She'd spent 7 years preparing to fight. Her hand plunged into her pocket and came out with something small, an electronica device she'd spent months building from plans she'd found in obscure corners of the internet. Places where people discuss the things that shouldn't exist. An electromagnetic pulse generator, crude but functional. Cassandra sent me something, Maya said, her voice shaking but defiant, before she disappeared. She said the lights made it hurt. She said it hated anything that disrupted the spaces. The creature paused. That technology cannot harm us. Let's find out. Maya triggered the device. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Every light in the store surged brilliant white, then exploded in a cascade of sparks and shattered glass. Emergency backup lights kicked on, running on different circuits, bathing everything in harsh red. The creature screamed, a sound like metal tearing, like breaking bones. Like 1,000 voices crying out at once, it convulsed, its form flickering between solid and smoke. And in that moment of distraction, Maya saw her chance. She ran not toward the locked front door, but toward the back, toward the storage area, toward the place where Cassandra had last been seen. If the creature lived in the spaces between, maybe that's where the answers were too. Maya crashed through the storage room door, her lungs burning, the creature's anguished screams still echoing behind her. The emergency lights cast everything in blood-red shadows, turning the already cluttered space into a maze of nightmares. Boxes stacked to the ceiling created narrow corridors, and the old metal shelving units loomed like the ribs of some massive beast. But Maya wasn't looking for a place to hide. She was looking for the truth. Her hands trembled as she pulled out her phone and activated the flashlight app. The white beam cut through the red darkness, illuminating dust motes that swirled like tiny galaxies. Behind her, the creature's cries had stopped. That was somehow worse. The silence felt predatory, anticipatory. Cassandra, Maya called out, her voice cracking. If you can hear me, give me a sign. Anything, nothing. Just the hum of the emergency lights and her own ragged breathing. Then she saw it, on the far wall. Barely visible behind a tower of inventory boxes was a gap. Not a door, not a window, but a space that simply shouldn't exist, a vertical slice of absolute. Blackness that seemed to absorb her flashlight beam rather than reflect it. Maya approached slowly, every instinct screaming at her to run the other way. As she got closer, she could feel the temperature drop, could hear something like breathing coming from the impossible gap. The space was maybe 6 inches wide and ran from floor to ceiling, like reality had been cut with a knife and the wound had never healed. The spaces between, Maya whispered, remembering the creature's words. This was where it lived. This was where it kept its victims. She reached out with a shaking hand, fingers stretching toward the darkness, a sound behind her. The skittering, sliding movement of the collector. Maya spun and saw it at the storage room entrance. Its form more solid now, recovered from the electromagnetic pulse. But something was different. It looked diminished somehow, less substantial than before. The pulse had hurt it more than it had admitted. You cannot have her back. The collector hissed. All pretense of civilization dropped from its voice. She is ours. This place is ours. We have claimed it, fed from it, existed in its forgotten corners for decades. Before this was a store, before it was anything, there was a gap in reality here, and we slipped through. We have been collecting ever since. How many? Maya demanded, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. Fear had burned away, leaving only fury. How many people have you taken? 17 over 63 years? The lonely ones, the forgotten ones, the ones who worked when no one else was watching. They sustain us. They are part of our collection now, preserved forever in the between spaces. You're a parasite, Maya spat. A monster that feeds on misery. We are a survivor. This world is hostile to us. But we found a niche, an ecological role. We take only those who won't be missed, who slip through the cracks of your society. We are efficient. We are sustainable. Cassandra was missed. Maya screamed, I missed her. I've spent 7 years looking for her. The collector tilted its head, genuine confusion in its alien features. That is unusual. Most of our collections are alone, forgotten. You are an anomaly, Maya Rodriguez. Your persistence has drawn you here, but it will not save you. Join your friend. Accept your place in our collection. The alternative is unpleasant. Maya's hand closed around the second device in her pocket, not an EMP this time, but something else. Something she'd prepared based on her research into the thin places where reality wore thin. The gaps between worlds where things like the collector could slip through. I have another option, she said quietly. I closed the gap, permanently. For the first time, she saw something like fear flicker across the creature's inhuman face. You cannot. You do not have the knowledge, the power. I have something better. I have rage. And I have this. Maya pulled out the device. A modified tablet running software she'd spent 2 years developing with the help of scientists who studied quantum theory. Mystics who understood the spaces between. And programmers who could translate impossible concepts into code. The collector. Lunged, Maya activated the device. Reality screamed. The world inverted. Maya felt herself falling upward, or perhaps sideways, into a direction that didn't have a name. The storage room vanished, replaced by something her brain struggled to process, an infinite space that was simultaneously claustrophobic. A place made of gaps and absences, where the normal rules of physics were merely suggestions. She was in the between space. The collector's domain, and she wasn't alone. Figures stood in the impossible distance, frozen like mannequins in a forgotten display. 17 of them, the collector had said. 17 people stolen from their lives and pressed into this dimensional gap like flowers in a book. Sandra, Maya called, and her voice echoed in ways that made her teeth ache. One of the figures moved. It was sluggish at first, like someone waking from a decades-long sleep. But it turned toward Maya's voice with growing speed. As it approached, features resolved from the general Blursian features. Dark hair, a Thornwood General Store uniform. Maya. The voice was rough from disuse, but unmistakable. How? How are you here? How is this possible? Maya started crying and couldn't stop. 7 years. 7 years of searching, and here was Cassandra, looking exactly as she had the day she disappeared, preserved in this timeless void. I came to find you. I came to bring you home. Home. Cassandra said the word like she'd forgotten its meaning. Maya, I'm trapped. We're all trapped. The collector feeds on us, on our fear and loneliness. It sustains itself on our despair. We exist here, conscious but unable to move, to act, to do anything but feel it feeding on our misery. Not anymore. Maya held up the device, its screen glowing with impossible equations and reality-warping code. I'm going to collapse this space. I'm going to seal the gap the collector came through and send it back to wherever it originated. That will kill it, Cassandra said slowly. And it might kill us too. We're part of this space now, integrated with it, or it might free you. Either way, you won't be prisoners anymore. Around them, the other frozen figures had begun to move, drawn by the conversation. Some had been here for decades. Maya could see a woman in a 1960s dress, a man in 1970s bell-bottoms, all of them looking at her with desperate, hopeful eyes. Do it, Cassandra said firmly. Whatever happens, it's better than this. Maya, you shouldn't have come here. You should have lived your life, moved on, been happy. But since you're here, finish this. For all of us. Maya nodded, tears streaming down her face. She began the activation sequence, watching as the device's screen filled with cascading code that looked almost alive. The between space began to vibrate, reality itself beginning to rebel against the impossibility of its existence. The collector materialized before them, towering and terrible, its form flickering as the space destabilized. Stop. You will destroy everything. This space has existed for millennia. We are part of the cosmic ecology. We serve a purpose. Your purpose is pain, Maya said coldly, and it ends now. She triggered the final sequence. The between space began to fold in on itself like origami in reverse. The collector screamed not in rage now, but in genuine terror as the dimensional gap that had sustained it for so long began to seal. It grasped at the edges of reality, trying to hold the space open. But Maya's program was relentless. Rewriting the quantum equations that allowed the gap to exist, the 17 trapped souls began to glow with pale light, their forms becoming translucent. It's working. Cassandra shouted over the roaring wind that had sprung up from nowhere. Maya, you did it. You actually... The space convulsed. Maya felt herself being pulled in multiple directions at once, her body trying to exist in dimensions it wasn't designed for. She saw Cassandra reaching for her, saw the other victims becoming streams of light, saw the collector fragmenting into pieces that looked disturbingly like the people it had consumed. Then everything went white. Maya woke up on the cold concrete floor of the Thornwood General Store's storage room. Emergency lights still bathed everything in red. Her device was shattered beside her, smoking faintly. Every muscle in her body screamed in agony, like she'd been stretched and compressed simultaneously. But she was alive, and she wasn't alone around her. Lying on the floor like they'd simply fallen asleep were 17 people. Some were dressed in clothing decades out of date. Some looked confused and disoriented. But all of them were breathing, moving, alive, and there. Sitting up slowly just a few feet away, rubbing her eyes like she'd just woken from a nap, was Cassandra Leo. Did we? Cassandra's voice was hoarse. Are we? We're out, Maya sobbed, crawling across the floor to embrace her friend. We're out. We're alive. You're here. They held each other and cried while around them. 17 impossible survivors began to wake up to a world that had moved on without them. The Thornwood General Store stood empty now. Yellow police tape across its doors, though not for the reasons Maya had originally hoped. The official story was complicated. 17 missing persons cases spanning 6 decades, all connected to one location. The FBI was involved, psychologists, scientists trying to explain the impossible. Maya sat in a coffee shop across the street, watching workers board up the windows. Cassandra sat across from her, looking healthier than she had in months, but still adjusting to a world that had changed dramatically in 7 years. They're going to demolish it, Cassandra said quietly. The building inspection found structural anomalies in the back wall. They're calling it a sinkhole risk, but the engineer I talked to said the readings didn't make sense. Like there was a space that used to be there but isn't anymore. Good, Maya said firmly. It should never have existed. The other 16 survivors were scattered now, reuniting with families or, in cases where everyone they'd known was gone, being helped by victim services to rebuild their lives. The 1960s woman, her name was Dorothy Chambers, had wept when she learned her husband had died 10 years ago, still looking for her. The 1970s man Robert Martinez had discovered his daughter was now older than he was. The trauma was real and ongoing, but they were alive. They had a chance. "I got a job offer," Cassandra said, pulling Maya's attention back. "Teaching position at the community college. Working with at-risk youth. You figure, I lost 7 years. I can spend the rest of my life making sure other people don't fall through the cracks." Maya smiled. "That's perfect. That's exactly what you would have done anyway. What about you? The revenge you wanted on the people who ignored my disappearance? Are you going to pursue that?" Maya thought about it. She'd spent so long focused on vengeance, on making someone pay for the injustice of Cassandra's disappearance. But the real enemy hadn't been incompetent cops or indifferent bureaucrats. It had been something far worse, something that fed on the forgotten and the overlooked, and she'd destroyed it. "I think," Maya said slowly, "I'm done with revenge. I got what I really wanted. I got you back. The rest is just noise." "So what now?" "Now," Maya pulled out her laptop. "Now I write. I document what happened, not for the public, they'd never believe it, but for the people who need to know. The researchers studying thin places, the investigators looking into other disappearances. I'll call it fiction, publish it as stories, but the people who need the information will find it. And maybe, just maybe, we can prevent something like the collector from claiming anyone else." Cassandra reached across the table and squeezed her hand. 7 years you looked for me? You never gave up. You know that's insane, right?" "Completely," Maya agreed, squeezing back. "But I'll do it again, I know." "That's what scares me." Cassandra smiled, and it was the same smile Maya remembered from before, bright and defiant. "Thank you, Maya, for being insane enough to come find me." They sat together as the sun set, watching workers tear down the building that had housed a monster. Tomorrow, there would be therapy sessions and difficult conversations and the long process of healing. But today, right now, 2 friends were together again. Alive, despite impossible odds. The space where the Thornwood General Store stood would eventually become a community garden, Maya learned later. A place of growth instead of hunger, of life instead of collection. Dorothy Chambers would plant the first tree there, a memorial to all those who'd been lost to forgotten places, and late at night. When Maya couldn't sleep, she would sometimes wonder about the gaps between things, the spaces that shouldn't exist. Were there more collectors out there, feeding in the forgotten corners of reality? Probably. The universe was vast and strange, full of cracks for things to slip through. But she also knew something the collectors didn't. Humans were persistent. Humans loved fiercely and refused to forget. Humans like her would always come looking, always fight to bring their people home. 7 years she'd spent preparing for revenge. She'd gotten something better: redemption, reunion, and the knowledge that even in the darkest spaces between reality, love and determination could shine a light. Maya closed her laptop and looked at Cassandra, who was scrolling through her phone, catching up on 7 years of memes and cultural changes, occasionally showing Maya something particularly baffling and laughing at her own confusion. This was worth it. All of it. The thing behind the shelves was gone, and the people it had stolen were free.